Sadly, we've come to this place. Despite years of research on the effects of media in games and people, despite the longitudinal studies, despite people who study both media and real life massacres, almost all of whom unanimously saying there's no effect of violent video games on an individual. What is one of Obama's main things that he does? Does he ban the assault rifles outright that everybody was afraid he'd use executive order to do? No. He turns over billions of dollars to throw at the CDC to study the effects of violent video games and media on your average person. I haven't been this angry since instead of investing in safe sex and condoms in Africa, we've invested in mandatory male circumcision based off of faulty, and I might add, false reports and studies that were used to convince Congress that this, instead of safe sex ed as well as condoms, was the way to stem the tide of AIDS in Africa. Because, see, one of my professors who studies or has studied a lot of this, one of my professors who worships at the altar of Bandura. So you can already tell, at least in terms of this subject, he was not my favorite professor. He shares the same fears that your average American does, that there are kids out there that are committing crimes, some as young as 10, without even a shred of regret or remorse or empathy, and that somehow it's likely to or has to be the video games. And that upset me. I had a very calm, civil talk with him, and the only thing we could agree on is that nobody has to expose kids to these types of media. But to say that there is any direct correlation is an out and out lie. It's disingenuous, it's dishonest, and it should have no place in this discussion. Instead of looking at society as a whole, our president has decided to turn over the study of studies over to the one agency that seems to be filled with people who are as afraid of violent video games as your average concerned soccer mom. And that scares me, and it should scare most of you too. President asks Congress to fund study on video games and violence. President Obama directed further research be done into the relationship of video games may have to violence. Part of the series of action the White House is taking in response to the problem of repeated mass shootings across the country. In a news conference taking place now, of course this is an old link, the president asked Congress to set aside $10 million for the Center of Disease Control and Prevention to study the ties between violent images and media, specifically mentioning, quote, the effects of violent video games on young minds, end quote, and violent crime. Oh dear God, how many times do I have to repeat this? I've talked at great length, with great lengths, about what goes into youth violence. I've shown you chart after chart that with the introduction of games like Doom and Grand Theft Auto, youth crime has nearly plummeted. It's like it's going along, Doom hits, Grand Theft Auto hits, many others hit, and suddenly it's like a sheer cliff down. Oh, but no, the media has to desensitize kids. It has to do this. It has to do that. It just simply has to. You mean just like using prophylactics and having sexual encounters for pleasure has to lead to other immoral activities, right, Texas? I'm not sure who I'm most angry with. And don't take my calm demeanor to be that I'm not beyond upset. But the fact that not only is the president trying to claim that there's probably a link there or that he wants concrete evidence, whatever that means, that this media does what everybody is assuming it does, instead of addressing the real problems. He's no better than the militant anti-gun people who don't have realistic expectations or answers to this problem, nor the militant pro-gun people who equally don't have the slightest idea as to what is causing this problem or how to fix it, and has no meaningful solutions to propose outside of take my gun and I will shoot you. But I'm peaceful, I promise. And again, I'm not against responsible gun ownership, but if somebody's going to give that conflicting of a message and they're going to make me believe it, then we have a problem here. You're willing to use your tool to commit homicide to prove that your tool is harmless and therefore should be left alone. That's inexcusable. So too is this. This is a non-solution to a non-problem that has been proven again and again, links to my research down in the underbar, to be a non-problem. Somebody doesn't go from a marathon of playing Madden to spraying bullets on the street. I don't know how many different ways in which I can say this. My gosh, I feel like the fictional character Ripley at the beginning of Alien being drilled, or Aliens being drilled by the Weyland Yutani Corporation, where she's in a meeting for hours, constantly saying the same thing over and over again with slight variations, trying to make people understand the simple facts and truth of the matters that are going on. And like myself, I'm being met with just out and out, la la la, I can't hear you, la la la, violent video games and media are the leading cause of violence in this society, hands down, period, the end. Because that's a solution. Bury our heads in the sand and sign off on non-solutions to non-existent problems. Though, to be honest with you, I have no faith that Romney would have gone that far. He would have just signed off that all games had to go, and that would be that. And then he'd make gun access even easier in this country. Some of what the president's doing is part of the solution, and I will get to that in the next video. But this, I expected better of you, Mr. President. I expected smarter. And I guess I'm just a masochist like that. I like being hurt, apparently, because I like to put my faith into somebody to be able to look at the available data and be able to comprehend it and understand that this is a fool's errand and this will solve nothing. Although this may speed along the death of the gaming industry as we know it, and I guess I'm kind of conflicted since I've already talked about how, as much as I love the gaming industry, their business practices alone are enough of a reason why the gaming industry needs another crash and resurrection. But this is just stupid.